Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our second webinar this month, in which we're going to explore the world of AI and in particular look at the 10 areas relating to AI that employees must consider when introducing it into the workplace. So before we make a start, we would like to introduce ourselves. So I'm Victoria Templeton, HR Knowledge Manager here at HR Solutions, and I'm joined today by my colleague Sue Watson, Head of Client Services. We'll be together taking you through the webinar, taking your questions and seeking your views through our polls. And then we're supported as well by Rebecca Johnson, who will be helping out with any technical problems, but hopefully we shouldn't encounter any. If you do, then just make contact through the question panel that you've got on your dashboard. Because we've got so many of you who've joined us today, we've placed you on mute. But obviously, as always, we do like to have your questions. So when we see this slide, which will be at the end of the webinar, that means we're going to be taking your live questions, as well as answer those questions that have been submitted to us as part of the registration process. Here's just a quick run through, though, of how you can submit those questions. So on the screen now, you'll see an image of what your GoToWebinar panel looks like. And you simply type in your questions, and as I said, we'll aim to read out and answer as many as we can at the end of the webinar today. So let's move that out of the way. There we go. When we have this poll slide, it means that we shall be running a poll. We have got many today because it's such an interesting and hot topic at the moment for everybody. We've got lots of polls, and I think it's helpful because as this is all new to many of us, it'll just be helpful to understand other people's views, what other people may be doing, considering. So hopefully you'll find a lot of value from when we run these polls today. So if you do want to participate, they're confidential. You simply answer the poll, and for those of you that are not familiar with our webinars, when you do participate, you just can't be in the full screen mode because for some reason GoToWebinar doesn't process your responses when you're in the full screen. And so what I thought we would do then for the session, so at first I'm going to give you a brief introduction to AI because obviously it's important to understand the main principles of it, then know how to address it and embrace it for the workplace. But obviously the majority of the webinar we're going to be taking 10 different key areas that are going to be very important and essential for employers. As I said, we've got some questions that have been submitted as part of the registration process, so we'll be answering those at the very end, as well as your live questions that you may have as we go through. And I think before we get going, we just want to know how everyone feels about AI in the workplace. As I said, it's a very new technology in terms of how quickly it's taking over. So I'm going to be shortly opening a Mentimeter for you to take part in. You don't need to provide any details, log in or register. It's simply a platform for you to add your answers. So everyone will have the opportunity to have up to 3 goes. We would like you to tell us, just using one word, how you feel about AI in your workplace. So simply tell us by adding your answer by going to either www.menti.com if you've got access to another web browser, or if you can on your smartphone, go to menti.com. You simply add the code, which is 27891658. The one in the image is just an illustration. Make sure it's the 27891658. Then you simply add in where you see those 3 boxes in the second table, one word to describe how you're feeling about AI in the workplace. And I'm going to change my screen so that we can see how this works. What I'll do is I'll keep it open for a few moments, and then I'll get to a point where I'll just say stop adding. So keep them coming for a while. Okay. Any more? Great. So let's stop inputting that, and we can, Sue, probably pick some of those key words that we're seeing here. Excited and equally apprehensive, curious, anticipation, apprehensive, yeah, wary. I think they're probably all ones we're feeling, and I think this is a good illustration to actually make us feel that we're okay in the way we're feeling about it. More work, yes, on one hand, which we can probably come on to as we go through the 10 areas to consider. Useful.
Absolutely, it is, and I think a lot of us, the more you see what it's capable of, the more impressive it is, but equally scary at the same time. So, and I think we'll find that as we discuss all the different aspects as we go through. There's lots and lots and lots of really exciting and possibilities of using it, but at the same time you have to be cautious and take account the fact that everybody is anxious, worried, concerned, apprehensive as well. So yeah, it's very much part of it.
And if you think about it, these are all what we're thinking, but actually, how do your employees feel? You know, if we're thinking some of these feelings, apprehensive, dubious, strange, you know, we can imagine that many of our employees will be feeling that as well. So thank you for that, participating. That's a really good insight into how we're all feeling like we're coping on this. So let's get going with the rest of the webinar, and it's all going to be about obviously the introduction to AI first, and as I said, before we get going, we just need to understand the principles. And I think it goes without saying that artificial intelligence, you know, it's groundbreaking and it's transformative. So if you imagine how Google and the internet evolutionized how we get access to our information, artificial intelligence is that same kind of concept, except it's much, much, much bigger. And like Sue said, when you see it, how it works, I mean, it's mind-boggling. And if you're not careful, and if you're not researching about how to manage it appropriately, it can be scary. It's about understanding it and making sure that the right controls are in place. So it is transformative. We can see how it is rapidly making fundamental changes to how we live and work. And actually, it's being cited as the fourth industrial revolution. That's how massive it is. And overwhelmingly, what we're hearing is that we should be embracing it rather than fighting it. Obviously, we don't want to take things at face value. We need to find out for ourselves. And that's why employers need to be cautious, do the necessary due diligence and research into it. And hopefully, as we go through the webinar today, you'll take away some really good key learnings and points to think about before going ahead with using AI. Because we do need to go with have caution with how we use it, because essentially what it's doing is it's emulating human intelligence, and the unnerving thing about it is that it relies on data and sophisticated algorithms to process information. And then once it has that data and the algorithms, it's from that the systems platforms learn from it and then makes decisions or predictions based on that knowledge. So the essential thing, I guess, in the big scheme of it, is it's about the data that you're inputting. So if you think about your ChatGPT and the prompts, a prompt is simply a question that you're asking the system. That's data, and it's continually learning from the data that you're adding in. So it is massive, and it can tackle complex problems. It learns from experience. It analyzes that vast amount of data, and that data it basically talks to the whole of the internet. It searches the whole of the internet. But where I said a moment ago that it's much, much bigger than when Google came about, it's because when you see that it's producing results for you, it literally takes seconds. So if you to ask ChatGPT something to produce something, it'll take just seconds to do. And that's a scary bit as well. So we do need to proceed with caution. ChatGPT and other AI platforms can also return inaccurate information. And whilst on the whole, it can return good information that can be helpful, there is a minority of instances where actually it can produce errors. And you may have heard in the news, I'd say probably 2 weeks ago, there was a solicitor going to court, having to defend a case. And even though the solicitor had really experienced, he wasn't a specialist in the particular area of law, and asked help from one of his paralegals to basically research in order for them to put together a skeleton argument as to why the claimant's case should be thrown. And what this paralegal did was, even though they had knowledge in this type of law, they used ChatGPT to search precedences and to see what it would return to be able to argue the case why the case should be chucked out. And what ChatGPT did was to return several cases, quoted them, and they were all wrong and made up. So it just created and made up all this information that wasn't true. And this is a good example to demonstrate that, yes, it might give you really quick information, but you still need a human in the process to basically sense check. As I said, that's the minority rather than the majority, but that's why there needs to be proceeding with caution because of the accuracy concerns. And we also need to accept that we are responsible for ourselves as well, in terms of, like I said, when the AI returns information, you shouldn't blindly rely on it. We still need that human interaction. We also need to be mindful of confidentiality and data protection. I'm going to talk about that as one of the 10 key areas. But what you need to remember is where I said about that GPT prompt, when you're adding a question, you're asking it to do something, that is data. So if you're asking it to analyze something and you put in some information, commercial information about your business, or some personal information about your employees, that essentially is a breach of data protection and UK GDPR. So there are massive, massive data issues, and that's why employers need to go cautiously, do all the research, and make sure they've got the right procedures and mechanisms in place to use it safely and fairly. And we'll come on to that as we go through the webinar. And just finally, there are many platforms out there that can do amazing things. And in this webinar, and on you'll see on this slide, for example, that image was created in about 10 seconds. So that was created through an AI platform. So it creates images, it creates text, it produces reports, presentations, it can even replicate voice. And that's probably the element of it that borders onto the scary side of it, because you think about if you've got all these systems that can replicate voice, and you're taking an employee through a disciplinary hearing, or or there's some witness statements, it gets questionable. So if it's not controlled and managed, then I think there's a lot of dangers. But nevertheless, there are still many beneficial elements to artificial intelligence. And before we get going and sort of understanding what those issues are, we're just going to run 2 or 3 quick polls here at this point. And really the first one is around, how many of you have had the opportunity to play with ChatGPT or something similar like Bard, or there's a few out there, aren't there? So have you had a play?
Still quite a lot. Not tried it yet. Okay. As I close.
It's an eye-opener if you do try it.
Let's close and share those results.
Okay, 62% of you have, and 38% no. And I think for those of you that haven't, it's worth a try, having a look, seeing what it can do. But just be mindful, obviously, data protection, all of that. I mean, just it's amazing what it can do. And obviously, those 62% of you, I wonder and this leads into our next poll, are you using it in your business? So some people may be, some people may not. So this will be an interesting poll.
It's quite a change.
Because I think it's sort of evolved really quickly and suddenly. I think was it last November, ChatGPT, for example, was first introduced to the general public. And then it's just evolved. And now it's just constantly in the news, isn't it? So
this changed a lot as it progressed, this one.
Has it? Okay,
really very close.
Yeah. So interesting, 49% of you are, so that's interesting. And yeah, feel free to add any comments in the questions about how you feel about how it's going. But yeah, that's really interesting. And hopefully the webinar will help you just to sort of sense check that what you're doing is obviously the right way and the right approach. And obviously the 51% of you that aren't, then I guess this webinar is probably food for thought and probably get you questioning whether is it worth to introduce for you. And moving on to the last poll in this section, it's more about you personally. Are you using it in your role in your organisation?
Okay.
So how are we doing with that? So interesting then, again.
There you go.
Yeah, 39% of you are using it as part of your role. So that's interesting to hear, and 47% aren't. With 14% of you saying no, but you will be. So that, yeah, very interesting. Thank you for inputting into those polls. That's interesting. So really, given the enormity of AI, I thought these are the sort of the good key areas for us to sort of understand in this webinar. I appreciate timings coming up for 2:30. There is probably a chance we may overrun. Hopefully you can stay on with us for the whole duration. But this is what we're going to sort of consider, the advantages, the disadvantages, you know, what are the issues of using it, or if you don't use it, data protection, ethical, legal compliance, duties and responsibilities, because we've all got a role to play. And obviously the critical piece around having a policy and how you manage that change and the impact on the culture AI could have. So this is the sort of the key areas we're going to be talking about. And for those of you that did answer that you are using AI in the workplace, I'm just interested to know, are you using it through your recruitment systems, training and development? You may use it for brainstorming ideas, writing documents or anything. So just let us know, and then it gives everybody else an idea of how they could potentially use it.
Okay, I'll close that and share those results.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, and I'd say the brainstorming part of it is really, really beneficial. Like I said a few moments ago, you still need that human interaction. So whilst it might return you some great ideas for pulling together, I don't know, a business case or something that you might be writing, you still need to sense check. But yeah, and writing business documentation, definitely, it's just a good starting point. And like I referenced at the start, analysing information, you know, ChatGPT and similar can analyse data. Just be careful that it's not personalised and you take any personal data out, or commercially sensitive information as well, because you don't want that going into the, I guess, what do you call it, into the program
into
itself.
the world, I guess.
Into the world. So yeah, So let's move on to the next. I think that's it for the polls at this point. We're just going to look here about the advantages, and again there's another image that's that was produced in slightly longer time, 47 seconds, but nevertheless it's produced that for us. And I guess really the advantages of AI goes without saying, the increased efficiency. So AI powered systems can automate repetitive tasks, any tasks that are time consuming. It allows employees to focus on more strategic and value-added activities, therefore. So it does ultimately help with improved productivity and operational efficiency. It can also enhance your decision-making. So AI algorithms can analyze vast amounts of data to provide valuable insights and predictive analytics. So that will help employers to make more informed decisions, but also more quickly, and leading to more effective strategies and improved business outcomes. But as I said, you need to go with caution with that because of the data protection issues. It can streamline recruitment, talent management. So I know some of you indicated to use it for training and development. AI can also be used to support recruitment processes. It can automate CV screening. It can minimize unconscious bias. It can conduct preliminary interviews. It can write job descriptions. It can do all sorts. So it can ultimately help from a recruitment point of view, and in managing appraisals, performance, skill gaps, identifying development opportunities. So it can bring many benefits in regards to your employees as well, and ultimately as well improved customer experience. So AI technologies such as your chatbots or virtual assistants, they enhance customer interactions on the whole by providing quick and accurate response. Yes, there are occasions when you still need to follow up and speak to a human, but essentially that technology helps organizations to become better at handling the customer experience and provide a customer service 24/7. So it does foster customer satisfaction and loyalty, which ultimately contributes to business growth. And our second element is looking at it from the other side with employees. Well, employees also benefit effectively from it. And here we have another image. And it reduces administrative burdens. So because it automates the repetitive admin tasks, it frees up employees' time to focus on more engaging and strategic work. So it can lead to better job satisfaction, employee engagement, and provide opportunities for skill development. It can also enhance decision making for employees as well. So not only beneficial to senior leadership, as I mentioned on the last slide, but if rolled out widely amongst the workforce, then your systems can provide employees with data-driven insights, recommendations, and then it helps them to use that to inform them on their decision-making process. And if people feel like they can work better at making decisions and have the ability to make decisions, that enhances their engagement and empowers them and feel like they're adding value. And then personalized learning and development. So AI-powered platforms can deliver tailored training programs and suggest learning resources based on individual needs. So it very well fits the supporting the continuous learning and professional growth, which is another key benefit. And it can also enhance workplace safety. So there's technologies out there that, like predictive analytics and computer vision. So the system interprets visual information. So you can upload an image and then it will give you advice and tell you about that image. So it can be used to identify potential safety hazards, for example, or proactively prevent accidents in the workplace. So it's incredible, it's mind-blowing what you can see, what AI can do. So there's many benefits as well for employees. But of course, there are issues with using AI, and there can be high initial costs. So I talked about ChatGPT. There's the initial version 3.5 that's free, and then there is a second version where I think you can pay monthly to have it. But essentially, you'll get high initial costs in implementing any AI systems, so they can be expensive, requires investment in the infrastructure, software development, training, maintenance, etc. So for the smaller businesses that obviously have limited budgets, then the cost of implementing may be unaffordable. You also have data privacy and security concerns. So AI systems rely on large amounts of data to be able to make those accurate predictions. So like I've talked about, if you're asking ChatGPT, then what you're entering is that prompt, and then the platform uses all of that data that you're adding to then continue to learn from it. So it does raise questions about data privacy and data security. So if data isn't properly protected or handled, then it can lead to breaches and unauthorized access to sensitive information. So that's a really, really key and significant point for employers. And another issue that comes with AI is your workforce displacement. So technologies have the potential, like I've spoken about, to automate various tasks. So it can lead to workforce displacement or the need for workforce reskilling. Consequently, there could be job losses or changes in how jobs are required to be completed. So there can be a lot of employee dissatisfaction, disengagement, resistance to change, etc. And I think if you're looking to introduce it into your organization, it's positioning it with your employee about how it partners what they're doing. It's about making their life easier and simpler, or their job easier and simpler, and supports them as opposed to taking over and doing their job. At the end of the day, we still need humans. You know, we are seeing errors with it, like I talked about that court case and making up 6 cases. There will always need to be a human in that element of human interaction. And on the human side of it, there's obviously the lack of human touch. So AI systems are designed to be objective and efficient, but they obviously lack the empathy. They don't have empathy like humans do. So customers and employees may prefer the human interaction for certain sensitive or complex situations. And so if you solely rely on AI, you can potentially lose that personal connection with your customers. So it's trying to understand to what extent you are going to be using it and how you reassure your employees and customers too. Bias and fairness is a big issue. All systems, AI systems, are trained on data. If the training of that data, if that data that it's training from is already biased or incomplete, it can lead to biased outcomes. So it can make the situation worse in terms of societal biases and discrimination against certain groups. And it can therefore lead to that unfair treatment or unfair decisions. So really there needs to be some caution around how you use AI systems to make sure they're not biased in any way. And we're going to talk about that in more detail in a while. So bias and fairness is another key significant area. There's a lack of accountability. So AI systems can make complex decisions, but they're not always may not always explain or are transparent in their reasoning. So and sort of I've made reference to how it can also make information up. So I think it's called hallucination, which I find quite funny, but it can hallucinate. So I think the thing to say is if you're using AI in your workplace, there needs to be that sense check from a human, or that step in the process where there's a human involved, because you need to be able to make sure that you're ultimately accountable for whatever it is that you're then producing that's based on AI. So you want to be comfortable that what you're producing in your name or your organization's name is correct, legally compliant and fair and non-discriminatory, etc. So you've got to take accountability. And then sometimes if you can be over-reliant on technology, then employers can neglect the importance of human judgment and expertise. So relying solely on AI without that human oversight can limit creativity, your critical thinking, the ability to adapt to unique or unexpected situations. They're all the skills that you get from a human, and obviously AI isn't able to do that. So yeah, so that's another important thing. So it is obviously beneficial, but there's obviously issues that come along with it too. But equally, employees should consider the issues of not adopting it as well. Look at it from the other side. And I think the main thing to say is the competitive disadvantage. You know, AI, the adoption of AI is becoming increasingly common, as we've seen on the polls already. And I think if businesses fail to embrace it or keep up with it, then they may see their competitors using it and enhancing their own efficiencies in decision making and customer experience, and may be better off as a result of using it. So you might lose that competitive edge. You might see a reduction in your agility. So AI can enable organizations to quickly adapt to changing market conditions and customer demands. So if you're not using AI in some form, you might find it harder to respond in either a prompt or effective manner when there's shifts in the market, and it could potentially hinder the organization's growth. You could also miss out on opportunities. So AI-powered analytics can provide insights and a wealth of information that can uncover untapped opportunities, and therefore the information that you can get from it can drive innovation and build new business. So if you're not using it in any way, then again you're going to be left behind and not be able to compete with other organizations in your local area. And in terms of inefficient resource allocation, without AI, you know, businesses may allocate resources inefficiently, which in turn can lead to higher costs, lower productivity. When you have AI-powered systems and technology, it can optimize resource allocation. So you know that as the business, your resources are being utilized in the most effective and strategic way. So there are issues with using it, but there's also issues if you don't use it. And that's the juggling act, isn't it, for employees at the moment? Do they or don't they go with it? And this leads us on to the fifth section, which is about the ethical use of it. And we're going to run a couple of polls. And I think, if I'm right, Sue, I think this is the next poll about the ethics.
Yeah, here we go.
Yeah. So do you think it's ethical for job candidates to use AI to write their CV? So this will be an interesting one.
Okay, I'll close and share that one. There you go.
Yeah, I thought it would be higher on the no. Yeah, so 66% of you think it's unethical, and 34% do. That's interesting, isn't it?
And bearing in mind it only produces what it's fed.
Yeah.
So
it's like a baby. It's like a person, isn't it, when you write and use it?
So yeah. All right, I'll hide that and we'll ask the other one, shall we?
And the other one, is, do you think it's ethical for employees to pass AI as their own in their work? I mean, their own work as their own. Because these are all sort of the common issues we can start coming across, can't it?
Yeah, we've had some questions already about copyright and.
Okay, we'll come on to that. Yeah,
so we'll cover that.
That's a minefield as well.
Okay,
yeah, interesting.
I'll close and share that one.
Yeah, interesting. 79% no, so a higher on the no again, and 21% yes. We'll come on to the copyright piece in a minute. But I know, for example, ChatGPT waived their rights to sue people if they were to go on and use the content. But yeah, interesting. So let's move on. So obviously it's important for businesses to navigate the ethical and legal compliance issues to ensure the responsible and beneficial use of AI. We've got to be obviously safeguarding the rights and well-being of our employees and customers. I've talked about algorithm bias should I say, and discrimination. So bias can be unintentionally embedded in AI algorithms. So like I've talked about, if the training data used to develop these systems reflect current society biases, then the AI is going to produce bias decisions and information. So if you think, AI systems can be used for decision-making processes such as hiring, promotion, performance evaluation, and so there's a risk and a danger of basically amplifying discriminatory practices. So if you're looking to move to using AI, then it's about taking steps to identify the risks and mitigate any bias in the AI algorithms to ensure that fair and equitable outcomes. And as an example of Amazon, they started a project and they were reviewing a lot of CVs. So it was a recruitment project, and I think they went back over 5-8 years or so of CVs. But the industry is obviously dominated, is male dominated, and so the system was asked to review CVs. Well, if the organisation is typically getting CVs from men, then naturally the output of the AI is going to be very much male dominated. That's the example of how unintentional algorithmic bias can occur. So that's why you really need to be thorough when you're researching your systems and software you're going to bring in and use, because you don't want to be having discriminatory and biased decisions being made by it. They did drop that project, by the way, so they identified that as an issue. Privacy and data protection. The AI systems often require access to large amounts of data to be able to function effectively. The collection, storage and processing of personal sensitive data does raise concerns regarding privacy and data protection regulations, so you need to be making sure that you're complying with UK GDPR and the Data Protection Act of 2018, because you need to safeguard individuals' privacy rights. So even, I keep talking about this example, you've got to even remember that the data you're using as part of a prompt, that is you inputting data, which could be personal data, and it's in the public domain, and AI technology will use that to learn from it and provide results moving forward. So we'll talk about that in more detail in a moment. And then in terms of transparency, then they're often, AI algorithms are often complex and difficult to interpret. So it's really vital that you can explain and are transparent in how your AI systems in your workplace operate, because people need to know about how decisions are made, how AI is used, and how decisions and actions come about. So ensuring that transparency and providing explanations for AI-driven decisions is going to be fundamental. And as I said, you're always going to need a human. You need that human interaction. If you're relying on a system to make decisions for you, that's where there'll be massive potential risk for you. So you need the human element to bring it back in line with ethical and legal compliance. And then intellectual property and ownership. So all systems are typically, as I said, trained on large data sets. Issues can arise by regarding intellectual property. So is that my creation or not? And there are a couple of cases, aren't there, that's going through at the moment. So there's an author that has sued, I think it's ChatGPT, because they believe the content of their book has been fed into the AI system. So they're claiming that copyright. And then there's another example. So there's no answer on these cases yet. It's unknown where things sit. There's another example of Getty Images. They are again also suing an AI platform for image creation because they're saying it's linked and using images that they own. So I think we come on to it a little bit more, but yes, intellectual property and ownership is a real key issue. And then implications for employment and resources. Well, the introduction of AI technology in the workplace can have implications, as you know, for employment and resource requirements. You may get concerns about job displacement, changes in job roles, requirements, the impact of the workforce. So you really need to consider the social and economic consequences of AI adoption as well. And then how you manage that in your communications with your employees, how you develop your strategy to introduce AI to mitigate then any negative effects that come from it. So data protection and security, it's essential to consider obviously your Data Protection Act and UK GDPR. As I've spoken about, if you're adding data into ChatGPT to analyse, so you might ask it to analyse trends in an employee's attendance record, then that is personal data and you're breaching the law. So you've got to be really careful. So just as a reminder from a data protection point of view, you need to ensure that when you're using AI, that you have a lawful basis for processing personal data. So you're probably already familiar with consent. It could be a contractual necessity, or you could be doing it for complying with a legal obligation. But you need to only collect and process only the personal data that's necessary for your specific AI applications. So you need to avoid excessive or irrelevant data collection, because it might violate the requirement to minimize the actual data that you need. And then it's also important to respect individuals' rights under the GDPR. So it's about informing them about the processing of their data, providing access to their data, offering the right to rectify, erase the data, you know, those similar principles that we already know as part of running a business. And then being transparent about your AI processes as well. This is really key for data protection. So including, you know, how the algorithms are used, the logic that's involved in the decision making, where the human element comes into your decision making processes, because individuals should be able to understand how their data is used and the potential impact of AI on their rights and freedoms. And then also implement appropriate technical and organizational security measures to protect personal data. So, you know, ensuring that you're using encryption, access controls, backup, staff training. You know, AI isn't just through your GPT, it could be through recruitment systems, your training and development software that you have. So think about the security measures as well. And then the data breach management. So I'm assuming everybody will already have in place procedures anyway, because it's part and parcel of data protection management. But you've got to have, you know, things in place to detect, report, and investigate any personal data breaches. A data protection impact assessment or AI impact assessment should be carried out for those activities that rely on use AI, because it's essential that you're identifying and then mitigating potential data protection risks. And if you work with service providers, AI service providers, or you share data with third parties, then you've got to make sure that they have adequate data protection measures in place as well. So do your due diligence before signing up to a partnership with third parties. Be comfortable that how they handle your data is in line with the UK GDPR. And then if you transfer personal data outside the UK, ensure that you comply with UK GDPR in terms of international transfers and putting in place the appropriate safeguards. And then finally in this section, ensure that you maintain records of your data processing activities and demonstrate your compliance with UK GDPR. So whilst on the face of it, AI brings a massive amount of benefits and can help business and productivity, but there is an awful lot of work to do before you get going and using it. I just thought I'd flag here that we have got, oh, it's gone back a slide, sorry. We do have a toolkit on data protection, it's simply just a download or the QR code. It's free. There's 8 parts to it, and it will just help you sense check how you're operating currently in line with the GDPR. So that might be helpful to have a look at as part of looking at introducing AI. And then we're going to look at now the responsibilities. So there's responsibilities for an employer as well as the employee. So there are legal and moral duties and obligations on the employer part to use it responsibly. It's essential that employers understand the ethical and legal implications of using AI, and in particular by carrying out the impact assessment, ensuring data that's collected is stored and processed in line with UK GDPR, and security measures in place, and that your systems and processes eliminate any risk of bias or discrimination. It's also essential that employers audit and monitor its usage. It's so important to educate your workforce. I think if you're going to introduce it, you need to take your workforce with you and gain their buy-in. And that having those open lines of communication, transparency, and educating them on technology will help achieve that. You need to have clear lines of accountability for decisions made by AI. So as I said, the data's there, but you still need to be accountable for what you then go on and produce by using that data, because you're liable. And have a clear written policy that is effectively communicated to your workforce and job applicants, so everybody knows how AI systems work, how decisions are made, how human interaction is still part of your decision-making process, etc. So make sure you've got that clear policy, and then take responsibility for how you use the data that AI gives you. And sense check everything is all I would say. We're going to run a few polls before we carry on with the rest of it. I'm conscious of time, so I'm hoping you can all stay around for the rest of it, because we're going to be talking about the policy in particular. So just want to know, would you trust the accuracy of AI to help with tasks? So I have given one example of where it's created some fake stories, but I've also known it to provide some helpful information as well.
It very much depends on what you use it for, and
yeah,
and as you've just said, you know, how you then use that information yourself. Okay, I will.
So how are we doing?
Close and share that one.
Oh, interesting. 63%. Yeah, I think that's looking back at the mind cloud earlier. Apprehensive, dubious. Yeah, that's probably not as a surprise. Anxious.
Yeah,
I think it's because it's new
good. It's
as
a good
well.
thing. Good to be cautious, isn't it?
Yeah, and also there's a lot to get your head around. I mean,
Absolutely.
it's mind-blowing when you see some of the stuff. But yeah, okay, and then I think we've got another couple of quick polls.
Yeah.
So would you let your employees use AI to perform their role? I guess this will depend on the type of organisation and the sector and the job itself.
Okay, I'll close and share that one.
Oh, 61%. Yeah. Interesting, yeah.
That's quite good. And then the other one was,
do you think it's necessary to use it to stay ahead of the curve?
okay, I'll share that one. So,
yeah, 74%. I mean, that's what we keep hearing, isn't it? You've got to be in it to win it, as they say.
Yeah.
And you'll be left behind. But I think because it's also early days, it's still all being, people are finding it out for themselves, aren't they? And
yeah, I think everybody definitely needs to consider it, look at it, explore it, and see, and at least then they'll know they have considered it, and it's either not applicable yet, or it needs more development before they can use it safely. But either way, I think everybody needs to have a look. So I'll just hide that one. I think that's it for now, isn't it? Yep.
Yeah. Just going to summarise some employee responsibilities. So, you know, employees are obliged to as well use company systems responsibly and ethically and lawfully. So there needs to be some boundaries in place, and this is why we'll come on to talk about policy. Employees also need to understand the organisation's approach and the rules, as I said, by adhering to relevant policies and procedures, and they've also got responsibility to report issues of concerns for how they think AI may be being used in the workplace. So there's responsibilities on employees as well to ensure that AI genuinely is managed fairly. And before we come on to talking about the policy, 3 more polls I think here. So are you concerned about how AI may change job roles in the future? I mean, this time in 5 years, who knows what the world of work would look like?
Other than we know it's going to be different.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll share that one.
Okay.
I think we're all rightly concerned about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's hard, but you know, I think you still need humans.
Absolutely.
You know, do you think your own role can be enhanced or strengthened by using AI? Can it be speeded up, for example? Take some of the admin away.
Give you time to do some of the things that you never get around to doing because of the routine stuff. Okay, I will close and share that one.
So, 90%. Yeah, that's good. That's really interesting. Yeah. And then, like Sue says, helps you focus on the strategic stuff. And then finally, just quickly, when it comes to implementing AI, what do you think is going to be your biggest challenge? So when I say training the software, that's the data that it relies on to make its decisions. How do you sell it to the business? Get the buy-in? What are the options? Can't quite see all the options.
So, and then it's also making employees use it efficiently, effectively, and lawfully.
Yeah.
And that's more the training of the employees as opposed to the software, isn't it?
It's like going back to the voice recognition thing and how you can create your own voice using AI. And then you think, like your banking that you can do by using your voice, or, you know, what if somebody, I don't know, just so
yeah, 100% think
yes, this is multiple options you could pick, but definitely everybody thinks making employees use it efficiently, effectively, and lawfully. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you. So here we'll come on to talking about the policy then. So given the issues around data protection and confidentiality, then you're going to need to have in place a clear framework as to how you'll incorporate it in the workplace, especially because we don't have any current legislation in the UK, or in fact I don't think anywhere in the world. But for example, there is a new employment bill going through Parliament, albeit it's at the very early stages. That's known as the Artificial Intelligence Regulation and Workers' Rights Bill. And so the purpose of that is to regulate the use of AI technologies in the workplace and to make provisions about workers and trade union rights and how it's used. So there is that on the horizon. Other than that, it's unregulated. So I think it's fair to say regulation is going to be vital just in general moving forward for how AI is used ethically, legally and appropriately. And so a policy needs to be in place for your organisation so that you can set out clear boundaries for how it could be used properly, effectively, and get the best out of it. So let's go back there, sorry. An employee, in terms of a policy, employees need to be able to understand how to use AI in their employment, or how it is being used in their employment. So how is it being used throughout the organisation? This is what you need to sort of think about when you're constructing your policy. How the organisation will achieve ethical and legal compliance. What are the parameters for using AI work? Are there some examples where you say, yes, we're happy for you to use it to do X, Y, Z, but you can't for these are the reasons? Setting out clear responsibilities is also essential, because if an employee breaches the policy in some way, or perhaps uses systems in a way that can perhaps discriminate against somebody or what have you, then you need to be able to have that clear framework around actually you've got responsibility to behave in a professional manner. Clearly, data protection and security considerations need to be built in, as well as the intellectual property issues. So I think there's no clear answer as to who owns the data. As I said, there's already a couple of high-profile cases that are going through the legal proceedings, and I don't think we're expecting any outcome anytime soon. But we do know that ChatGPT, for example, have waived their rights to claim from people using their data. But other than that, I think that's pretty much the situation with it. But obviously, we already, as UK employers, most of you will probably have in the contracts something to do with what content or work people produce as part of their job, and basically how it belongs to your organisation. So to some extent you've got those clauses, but other than that, I mean, it's difficult to know. And then how to raise concerns and how the organisation will deal with them is also going to be important, and obviously how you deal with inappropriate use is going to be essential as well. So you really need to have a framework and clear parameters in place for how AI is going to be used. Just to let you know, we've got a policy and an AI impact assessment available on our doc shop, or there's a QR code there if you want to have a look at the policy that we've created there. And then finally, this is our final number. So we're just a little bit after 3. And this is about change management. And we're going to just finish with just a few final polls. Really just to get a feel for how you feel your employees are feeling about the whole issue of AI. So the first one is around knowing your workforce. Do you feel there's a lot of nervousness from your employees?
You can share that one.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, that's not a surprise. I think sometimes it can seem quite scary. I mean, it is, but it's about how you manage it and how you communicate, how you're going to manage it without getting the reassurance, and how it'll never replace a human. You still need humans, but yeah, we'll come on to talk about change management in a moment. And then obviously 42% of you aren't worried. And then we've got another poll. Are you personally worried actually about AI replacing your role?
Okay, I will share that one.
No. So that's good to hear. That,
hopefully, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
a good percentage of you. Yeah.
And then I think we've got one more at this stage, have we? Yeah, I think it's the last one of these kind. Yeah, do you suspect it's happening in your organisation already? Are people talking about it?
We talk about it quite a lot, don't we?
We do. We keep dabbling with it. Okay,
but yeah,
I will close and share this one.
Interesting, yeah.
Yeah.
So I think it's about, if your employees are starting to talk or use it, it's trying to get ahead and start thinking about your parameters and whether you're happy for people to be using it, and if not, and you know, it comes back to your policy, or you know, does the organization have a position it wants to take on it, and then communicate that decision. Because I guess the longer it goes on people using it unofficially, the more likelihood you might get data breaches if people are not knowingly using ChatGPT in a way that actually can breach data protection, or you know, things like that, or relying on it to make decisions, and therefore could bring some discrimination issues. So I think it's about getting in there and trying to address that quick.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Okay.
So just bringing it to our end, we're going to just sort of go through change management and cultural impact. So obviously, it, by not doing it, I think this is, let me move on a slide, sorry, there we go. It's about having leadership and vision, employee involvement and engagement, communication, especially communication that's transparent, training and upskilling your employees. Now, training doesn't have to be like a formal training environment. You could just have some practice sessions of you all using ChatGPT and having somebody facilitate that that's got a good working knowledge, you know, or educating them through literature, etc. Identify change champions in the workplace that can really sell it and positively talk about it and the benefits it can bring. Being able to address fears and concerns is also vital, because nipping them in the bud will ultimately help you with a successful introduction of it. And then, you know, you could think of like how you would pilot it in a gradual implementation. So, you know, gradually do it. So start on small tasks first, or certain areas of the business first, and then gradually have that clear project plan for how you're going to integrate it into the workplace. And then I'd say collaboration and teamwork is essential, as it is with any aspect of work. Always evaluate the performance of it and recognise that whether you need to change it or stop what you're doing. And then obviously continuous learning and improvement about the systems that you use in your workplace. But all I'd say is, you know, communication is key, and leadership and vision. You know, you've got to lead your employees through it and give that reassurance that, you know, AI isn't about replacing people, it's to work alongside and make their roles more efficient. So we have one more poll, I believe. So I'll just check with you before, or should we go to questions?
Let's go to questions. Yeah. It's fine. Yeah.
So we've had lots of questions. If we can't get through them all, what we'll do is provide a summary of our responses to them and send a central publication out, which will probably be the week after next, because I'm on leave next week. But let's see how many we can get through.
Okay, some of them we have, the ones that were sent beforehand, we have actually covered during the webinar. There was specifically some questions around content and copyright, and also the fact that content could be duplicated if multiple people update it, and that's kind of, yes, that's the whole issue. Whatever you put into the AI system is then shared worldwide with whoever else is using the system. So your whatever you enter will be, will become part of an answer to somebody else's question, if the content is sufficiently similar. So yeah, and you could end up with the same two different people asking the same question, and depending on which program they're using, could get different answers. And that's part of the inconsistency. So we were testing it with using ChatGPT 3 and ChatGPT 4, the paid for one, and it gave you completely different answers. And the free one is often wrong the paid for one is more accurate. So they're
Yeah.
obviously trying to encourage people to start investing in the systems so that they can invest more in them to get them more accurate. But yeah, you are everything you put into it, you are training it, and you can tell it it's wrong. And correct it, and then you're correcting it for everybody else who then asks the next question. So so yeah, it is quite an interesting, but the whole issue of copyright is challenging at the moment.
It's not defined, is it? It's not there's not a clear position on it.
No,
It's
absolutely.
going to take a court case to give that decision.
So yeah, absolutely. It's watch this space again, like a lot of things, unfortunately. And then there's a question around, will this new tech be any more challenging than other recent developments such as the internet and e-commerce, etc.? I think it's got, because of the whole nature of it, it's going to be explosive, isn't it? So I think by its sheer nature, it's going to be more challenging than anything we've ever encountered.
I think the challenge from an impact on society point of view, and the pace at which it's coming in, I mean, it's just like this. Like I said, it's like the fourth industrial revolution. It's going to change. It's changing how we do things fundamentally. So yeah, I mean, all the things that we've gone through here, those 10 areas in particular, I mean, there's probably more areas as well, but they're the main ones. You know, they're the challenges and what you need to probably work through if you're thinking about using it.
Absolutely. And then there's another one, which is quite a broad question, but it's, how can ethics be incorporated in modern day education? That, yeah, it's a big issue. As you've seen from the polls we've asked, there's quite a few questions around the ethics of it all, and I think you have to look at it in the context in which you are using it. So, for example, a number of people said they didn't feel it was ethical for people to use it to write their CV.
Yeah.
But bearing in mind, it's only as good as what you tell it. Yeah, then maybe it's not that unethical, because it's just putting in a nice format and wording all your experience and all your jobs and things like that. It does make some assumptions, so you do have to sense check it that is absolutely true, and it can make some roles sound absolutely incredible, but nothing like what you used to do. No. So
and I guess it depends on the job. So if you've got an applicant that's coming for a I don't know, a marketing job. This is the first thing I can think of, Rebecca. And you want to look at how they write and communicate. Well, clearly, if somebody's used AI, that's not really going to be able to demonstrate and illustrate their written skills if they've used AI to produce that. Whereas if you have somebody applying for a more manual job, and it's just about their experience, it's the important thing, how many years in that role previously, then the extent to which how the CV is put together is not as relevant.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, there's a lot of ethical questions, and I think it's worthwhile taking the whole employee life cycle and, you know, get a working party together to focus on it and work your way through all the areas of the life cycle and ask all the ethical questions. Would you allow it for this? Would you allow it for that? And just map it out and then form your policy around that as well.
And I think if you're using it in things like recruitment, then you need to be absolutely clear if you do use any automation at any part of the recruitment process, such as shortlisting or, you know, and it's whether there is any human intervention to sense check that automation. And you need to be transparent in both your AI policy but also your recruitment policy, and that would need to be shared with candidates potentially. So yeah, it does open loads of questions around ethics, and how we teach modern day education. I'm surprised it's not. Because it comes into business ethics is quite significant. So if you are educating our young people to go out in the world of work, then ethics should be definitely on the agenda, personally, but that's probably more of a wider discussion than this context. And the questions, some of the questions that we're having through, or we've had through the webinar, have been all around the content. You know, if competitors put content in, then yeah, it is absolutely shared, and you don't necessarily get the same output, because it depends on if you word it the same, and even if you do word it the same, exactly the same, you can get two different answers, because it goes away, and search is its own knowledge for everything you've said, and it can bring back different answers, because there's invariably more than one answer to a question, and there is so much data, and it's constantly being updated, you know, all the while. So it will change from 1 minute to the next.
Mm-hmm. Even if you give it 6 months, you'll see massive changes in how accurate the data is as well, and the kind of information you get out from it.
Yeah. And if you adapt it into your own systems, then you can obviously lock it down more to your own content.
Yeah, that's true.
But it's looking at, you know, if you're using it on the worldwide system, the public system initially, then that's where the more challenging issues come. But you can lock it down and to within your own environment. But yeah, we need technical people. So I think that's all the questions covered.
It just reminded me then, there was a statistic out last week. There's a higher number of people applying for university this year that are all to do with like this kind of technical learning at university. Yeah. So yeah, so that's all the questions, isn't it?
That's all the questions, yeah.
Okay, brilliant questions. Thank you, everyone. So just as usual, we just like to summarise just how we can help you if you want our help in the future. So I've listed here all our management training courses. You'll see we can offer ILM levels 3 and 5, and then all of our other courses there count towards your CPD as well. So if anything that you need help with, then just give us a shout and we'll be happy to help support you and your business. We also run our health and safety courses as well. So these are always popular, especially mental health first aid. So we do the mental health first aider and also mental health ambassador, but lots of other health and safety courses as well. We continue with our free webinars every month. So next month, in a couple of weeks, we're going to look at building skills and capabilities. Obviously, recruitment still being a challenge for many SMEs. We're going to look to see how you can build the skills from within to help overcome some of those challenges. And then September's all about how to become an age-friendly employer, and October looking at some of the developments we've got coming up ahead around immigration and how they can impact on employment. If there's any topics or areas that you would like us to cover, then we would always welcome your ideas and thoughts. So please do get in touch. It would be great to hear from you, because we're about to create the next schedule of webinars. And then just a final poll. I promise it is the final one, and this is probably the webinar with the most polls on that I've ever run. But this one is just really if you'd like our help and support moving forward, then just indicate what you'd like our help on, and then we can follow up with you after the event.
Okay, I'll just close that poll. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
And that brings us to the end of the webinar. So thank you everybody for taking part in all of the polls, your contributions. It's really been helpful and insightful, and obviously for taking the time out of your busy schedules. And apologies for overrunning, but I hope you found today valuable. And a copy of the slides will be issued in due course along with the recording. So thank you once again, and thank you Sue and Rebecca for your support as well. Thank you everybody.
Okay, bye-bye.